I'm Michelle Anderson of Clarinet Mentors. Welcome to another free video to help you play the clarinet more easily. If you're already a member of the Clarinet Members community, you probably are seeing this from the newsletter, and if you're not, I'll tell you at the end of this video how you can sign up to get notified whenever these new videos become available. Today, I'm going to teach you how one of our everyday musical tools, the very mechanical metronome, can actually help us to play much more expressively and freely as a musician. Now, it may seem like a bit of a contradiction that this little robotic device helps us play more freely and expressively, but it really can. It's a valuable tool for many things. So there is a resource that you would find handy to have with you as you're watching this video, because there's a piece of music I'm going to use as a demonstration, and you can download a free copy of it from my website. If you have the newsletter, the link's right there in the newsletter. If not, you can go to www.clarinetmentors.com and click on the Worksheets tab. And you'll see there a worksheet for an excerpt from Rose Etude number 3 from the 32 Etudes, or the 32 studies. Etudes is the fancy French way of saying studies. That's an excellent book. A lot of people use it as part of their clarinet curriculum. And this is a really pretty etude. So what I have there is just the first 8 bars. Now, if you have your own copy of the book, you're welcome to simply turn to that. But you may find it useful to look at some of the edits I wrote in, because I'll be referring to them as we go through there. So if you don't have that copied, you may at least want to bring it up on your screen or print it out before we continue with the rest of this video. Let's take a look at the music. The reason I selected the Rose number 3 Etude from the 32 studies is that it's quite well known, and I think it's a beautiful piece of music. There's a lot of expression that we can make with this. Now, I will say that just like every actor might play a role differently and be very effective at it, every musician would probably choose to play this song differently as well. So for you, you need to find a way for the music to sing the way you hear it inside of yourself. For simplicity, I have written in some crescendos and some diminuendos. So you'll see those little hairpins going up and going down throughout the music. That's one way to interpret the music. For this exercise, that's how I'm doing it. But you can adapt the exercise to however you think the phrase works best for yourself. Let's take a look at this music. I've been teaching for about 30 years, and I've noticed a real trend in both my own playing and that of all of my students. When we're playing something really slow like this, there's 2 really common problems that we encounter. And if you know about them, then you'll know how you can overcome them and make the music sound the best possible. One is that when the beat is very slow, and this is often performed at quarter note equals 56 or even slower, we lose track of the counting and the rhythm becomes very poor. Obviously, a metronome, which keeps a steady beat, is a really good tool to help us improve our rhythm. But the second challenge I find is that when the phrase is quite slow and there's long notes, people lose track of where they're headed with the phrase, and the notes get boring. And even though in their head they might be hearing beautiful music, what comes out of their instrument is kind of boring. And you don't want to be boring. You want to always tell a story. So I'm going to look at the first 2 measures of this piece of music, or the pickup notes to bar 1, and then we'll finish our first phrase at the end of the quarter note that's in the second full bar. One of the ways we can use a metronome to help us play the phrasing better is to, as a practice tool, turn every single note into a smaller unit. So what do I mean by that? Well, I noticed that the pickup notes are 2/8 notes, and then I have 3 half notes in a row. Now, it's the 3 half notes that worry me when I'm looking at expression, because it would be very easy to make those quite boring. If we just kind of get stuck on that note, the music's not going anywhere. And I'll demonstrate that. And for the sake of really hearing what the music's doing, I'm going to leave off the ornamentation for right now. So no trill, no grace note. I'm going to kind of put in a crescendo and a diminuendo, but I'm going to do what most people do, which is not really notice what I'm doing. Now, my timing was probably okay there, but my music was pretty boring. Each long note sort of grew a bit, and then I lost interest and it kind of faded a bit. And then it grew a bit, and it faded a bit. It's not as good as I want it to be. What I want is for my crescendo to start at my starting note and to really go all the way till I hit my peak note. For today, that's going to be the A, the downbeat of the second full measure. And then I want to have an absolutely beautiful taper down to the end. If I'm thinking that way, it's a very different sounding phrase. A lot more expressive. So one of the tools that I use to help me get there is my metronome. And here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to play everything in eighth notes. So like I said, those half notes are the notes that worry me. I'm going to change them as a practice tool into 4 eighth notes each. The first full measure, which is written as 2 half notes, now will become 8 eighth notes. And each note should get louder than the note in front of it. When I get to the second full bar, again, I start with a half note. That's now 4 eighth notes. Each of those should get softer than the one in front of it. And my last note, the quarter note, will be 2 eighth notes. This is surprisingly difficult to do. Most people, when they play, will find even when they subdivide it, they get weird notes sticking out louder or softer than the others. But if you can really listen to yourself and incrementally make each note get louder or softer, it's a fantastic tool to help you be more expressive. And you're going to want to turn your metronome on to do this. So I'm going to pause the video while I get mine ready to go here. Let's say that I'd like to perform this piece at quarter note equals 56. Because I'm going to play in eighth notes, I'm actually going to set my metronome either to subdivide into eighth notes. So if you have a fancy subdividing metronome, you'll set the beat at 56 with subdivisions. That's what I'm doing. I use the one note metronome. So now I can see my big beats, but I can hear that subdivision. If your metronome doesn't subdivide, no problem, just set the beat to double speed, right, to 112, and you'll have the same basic effect. So with this running, I'm going to play those basically first 2 full measures. I'm not counting that first measure as a bar. It's usually just the 2 pickup notes that show. And I'm going to match the beat, really ensure that my very first note is my softest note. And for the next bar and a beat, every note's going to get louder. My loudest note will be the downbeat of the second full bar, which is the A half note. And then I'm going to get softer. Let's give that a try. So 1, 2, 3. Now I'll pause my metronome for a minute. While I'm doing that, I'm trying to listen to myself really critically and say, well, did I really do an even crescendo? And I might think, I don't think I started quite soft enough. I actually think I could start softer. And in my last bar, as I was doing my diminuendo, I think my E kind of jumped out. So even though my 4 E's got softer, that E wasn't necessarily softer. And these are really common things. And if we're doing it while we're subdividing, we're guaranteed we're doing it when we're actually playing the phrase the way it's written. So this is our way to hear it and ferret it out. So I might try it again and say, wow, I want my 2 E's at either end to be even softer. So I would reset my metronome, try it again, and do it better the next time. After I've played it this way about 3 or 4 times, and I really do feel like I actually am getting a nice, beautiful gradual up and down, then I'll play it as it's written with my air trying to achieve exactly the same thing. It makes a huge difference to how expressively you play. And I think what would be even better is if you record yourself doing this. So just the way I recorded myself doing this for you, if I listened, I would hear those little flaws that I just described and I would do it better my next time. I want you to do that as well and record yourself playing it better and better each time. That alone will make your slow pieces so much more expressive. Now, I should say, in a piece like this that's slow and beautiful, if I were performing it, I would not be strictly in time all the way through. So my intention is not to turn on a metronome and play this piece from start to finish with no variance in the beat. My intention is to take each phrase and use the metronome as a tool to help me ensure that the inner line, the inner pulse of the music is following a beautiful phrase Once I have that solid, then I can play around with the time a bit. I might slow down at the end of a phrase, I might dramatically push ahead somewhere, but I want to know that first of all I've built it on a really solid foundation and that I feel that music really solidly. Using subdivision, or taking a longer note and dividing it into smaller pieces as we did, is such a valuable tool while we're practicing, and I see another opportunity within this piece to use it to help us play in better rhythm. So remember earlier I said the biggest challenge people often have in slow pieces is either that it's boring, in which case the exercise we just did will help us be more expressive, but secondly, that we misplay the rhythm. And subdividing really helps us play rhythm more accurately. A lot of times people lose track of long notes when they're playing a slow piece, but if internally you're feeling those eighth notes as a pulse, you're going to play the long notes exactly the right length. Another rhythm from this excerpt that a lot of people misplay, most people in fact, are the dotted 8th, 16th notes. So if you look at the end of the first line and the beginning of the second line, both of those measures have a dotted 8th, 16th in them. The way we usually misplay it is we turn it into a triplet figure. Instead of 3/4 of a beat plus 1/4, we play 2/3 of a beat plus 1/3. I don't know why. I think it's because we really like triplets. That's my theory. I hear so many people misplay it that way. I've just decided human beings like playing triplets. But we don't want to if it's not written that way. So if I were to take the second full phrase, which starts right after I left off, so let's say beat 4 of the second measure that has notes fully written in it, or the third measure as it's printed here on that high E, that phrase has those dotted 8 16ths. I could subdivide it into 16th notes. And when I get to that dotted 8 16th, the 16th will fall right in place if I'm thinking dee, 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 da, da, 3 16th notes plus 1. It's really easy. To literally play it that way is a fantastic practice tool. So, one, I could set my metronome to 16th notes and play the whole measure without running, and often I'll do that. Or I can just do that on my own and play those two bits as 16th notes, and I'll show you what that might look like. In fact, I'll do a combination of the two skills. I'm going to subdivide this bar generally into 8th notes, but when I hit the dotted 8 16ths, I'm going to flip into 16th notes. I'll be thinking of steady beat, I'll be thinking of my phrase growing, all of those things, but I'm adding a rhythmical component of 16ths into it. And so on. I would continue from there. Now obviously when I'm subdividing like this, I'm not slurring, so there's some things I'm tossing out the window. I'm not playing it maybe as smoothly as I would slurred, but I'm really teaching my body how to play this music with beautiful phrase. Then I add the slurring back in, and it works much better. So this should really help you improve your rhythm in slow pieces, and it should really help you ensure that the beautiful phrase that's in your head is actually translating through your clarinet. So I encourage you to try this and use a metronome. You can also do this without a metronome once you've practiced it a lot with the metronome, but I highly recommend using a metronome because usually we're not really aware when we're straying off the beat, and I want you to be aware of it. Once you know where you're doing it and you can control it, then you can do it on purpose and do it for musical reasons, but you don't want to do it by accident. That is one great way to use a metronome, and there are many other great ways. So I hope in future editions of the Clarinet Mentors newsletter, we'll talk about some other ways you can use it. If you're not a member of the Clarinet Mentors community, it's really easy to join. You just go to www.learnclarinetnow.com, it's probably written down there, and sign up. And you get a newsletter every 2 weeks, and you'll be the first to know when there's new videos or new clarinet products and programs and cool stuff that'll help you play clarinet more easily. If it's not a good fit for you, you can unsign up very easily at any time. I hope you've enjoyed this Clarinet Mentors video, and I look forward to seeing you next time.